I knew trouble was brewing when Sarah started her sentence with, "Honey, I've been thinking." After 23 years of marriage, those words had become a warning signal, right up there with, "We need to talk," or, "Does this dress make me look fat?" The spring sun was setting over our Boston suburb home, casting long shadows across our perfectly manicured lawn. I had just finished my usual Wednesday golf game and was enjoying a glass of scotch on our back patio. Sarah stood there, fidgeting with her wedding ring, never a good sign. "Our life has become so predictable," she continued, her voice carrying a hint of restlessness. I took another sip of my drink, already dreading where this conversation was headed. We had a good life, at least I thought we did. Both kids were in college, Emma at Yale and Michael at Berkeley. Our mortgage was nearly paid off, and my law firm was doing better than ever. Sarah's real estate business was booming too, thanks to the crazy Boston housing market. We had everything we'd ever dreamed of when we first met at Boston University Law School. But apparently, that wasn't enough anymore. "Amanda says," she started, and I had to suppress a groan. Amanda Parker, Sarah's best friend, and the queen of failed marriages. 3 divorces under her belt, each one leaving her richer than the last. She lived in a mansion just outside the city, drove a different luxury car every month, and had a way of making other women question their life choices. "Amanda says we're too young to settle into such a boring routine," Sarah continued. I set my glass down harder than intended. "And what exactly does Amanda suggest we do about it?" Sarah's cheeks flushed pink, matching the spring cherry blossoms in our garden. "She thinks we should explore other options." I raised an eyebrow, waiting for her to elaborate. "Other people, specifically." The scotch suddenly tasted bitter in my mouth. "You want us to have an open marriage?" She nodded, words tumbling out faster now. "Just temporarily, to add some excitement." "And you think destroying our marriage will add excitement?" "It won't destroy anything," she protested. "We'll have rules, boundaries." "Did Amanda help you come up with this brilliant idea?" Sarah's silence was answer enough. "I already talked to Rachel about drawing up an agreement. That stopped me cold." Rachel Thompson, my law firm partner. The same Rachel who had been giving me subtle looks for years. "You went to my partner about this?" "She's the best family lawyer in Boston," Sarah defended. "And she's discreet." I stood up, needing to move. "Let me get this straight. You want to sleep with other men, and you want me to agree to it legally. Is that about right?" Sarah touched my arm, her fingers warm against my skin. "I want us both to have some freedom, to remember what it feels like to be desired, to have that spark again." I looked at her really, looked at her. She was still beautiful at 47. Her blonde hair might need more frequent visits to the salon now, but her blue eyes were as striking as ever. Her figure had barely changed since our wedding day, thanks to her religious devotion to yoga and Pilates. "And what happens when one of us falls for someone else?" She shook her head emphatically. "That won't happen. I love you, Jack. This isn't about love. It's about excitement. Adventure." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Adventure? Like your friend Amanda's adventures? The woman who goes through husbands like seasonal fashion?" Sarah's face hardened. "That's not fair. Amanda is happy. She's living life on her terms." I walked into the house, needing another drink. Sarah followed me. "Just read the agreement Rachel drafted." "Please." The manila envelope was sitting on our kitchen counter. It had probably been there all day, waiting like a ticking time bomb. I picked it up, feeling its weight. "Fine. I'll read it. But I'm not promising anything." Sarah smiled, relief evident on her face. "That's all I'm asking." Later that night, in my home office, I read through the agreement. Rachel had outdone herself. The document was thorough, professional, and surprisingly balanced. It wasn't just about giving Sarah freedom to explore. It gave us both equal rights to pursue external romantic relationships. There were clauses about discretion, financial separation, and conflict resolution. Most importantly, there was a clear exit strategy. Either party could terminate the agreement at any time. All external relationships would end immediately. The marriage would either return to its original monogamous state or proceed to divorce. Rachel had thought of everything. Maybe too much. I pulled out my phone and texted her. Need to discuss the Wilson agreement. Lunch tomorrow. Her response came quickly. 1 p.m. at the Bristol. See you there. I set the phone down and leaned back in my chair. 23 years of marriage. 2 kids. Countless memories. And now Sarah wanted to risk it all because she was bored? The next day, Rachel was already at the Bristol when I arrived. She had chosen a quiet corner table, away from the usual business crowd. Her dark hair was pulled back in a sleek ponytail, her charcoal suit impeccable as always. I assume you've read it? She asked after we ordered. I nodded. Interesting interpretation of what Sarah wanted. Rachel's lips curved slightly. Oh, Sarah came to me wanting a one-sided arrangement. I explained that wouldn't be fair or legal. She took a sip of her water, ice cubes clinking against the glass. If she wants to open the marriage, it has to be equal. You're protecting me. It wasn't a question. Rachel met my eyes. I'm protecting both of you. This kind of arrangement, it rarely ends well. But if you're going to do it, you in. Proper boundaries. Our food arrived, and we ate in silence for a few minutes. What do you think Sarah will do when she realizes the agreement gives me the same freedoms? Rachel dabbed her lips with her napkin. I think she hasn't thought that far ahead. She's caught up in Amanda's influence. The glamour of it all. She hasn't considered that you might actually take advantage of the opportunity. I pushed my plate away, barely touched. And you think I would? Rachel's dark eyes held mine. I think you'd be surprised by how many women would be interested. The undercurrent in her voice was unmistakable. I changed the subject. Any other legal concerns I should know about? We spent the rest of lunch discussing technicalities. When I got home that evening, Sarah was waiting. Did you read it? I nodded. I'll agree on 2 conditions. Her face lit up. Anything. First, our bedroom remains sacred. No, outside activities happen there. She nodded quickly. Of course. Second, there has to be a 48-hour cooling-off period between any encounters. For both of us. Her brow furrowed. What do you mean? I mean, if either of us has been with someone else, we wait 48 hours before being intimate with each other. Or with anyone else. But those are my conditions, Sarah. Take them or leave them. She thought for a moment, then nodded. Okay, I can live with that. We signed the agreement that night. Sarah was practically glowing as she filed her copy away. I put mine in my office safe, next to our wills and life insurance policies. It felt oddly appropriate. Later, lying in bed, Sarah turned to me. Aren't you going to ask what I have planned? No. I kept my eyes on my book. I don't want to know. But, Sarah, if we're doing this, we need boundaries. What you do with your time is your business. Just remember the 48-hour rule. She was quiet for a long moment. What about you? Do you have plans? I set my book down and turned off the light. Good night, Sarah. Little did she know, Rachel's words from lunch kept echoing in my mind. You'd be surprised by how many women would be interested. I was about to find out just how right she was. The first week after signing the agreement passed in a blur of awkward moments and unspoken tensions. Sarah spent more time than usual at her office, coming home late with vague explanations about client meetings. I threw myself into my work, taking on extra cases and spending long hours at the firm. Rachel kept her distance, professional as always, but her knowing glances spoke volumes. It was a rainy Thursday when everything started to change. I was driving home from the office when I spotted a familiar car on the shoulder of the road. Olivia Martinez, our neighbor from 3 houses down, was struggling with a flat tire. I pulled over without hesitation. The rain was coming down harder now, soaking through. Of my suit as I helped her with the jack. My hero, she smiled, pushing wet dark hair from her face. You must be freezing. Come in for coffee? I hesitated, but the rain made the decision for me. Olivia had moved in 6 months ago after her divorce. She taught yoga at an upscale studio in the city. Her house was warm and inviting, with the scent of vanilla candles in the air. Let me get you a towel, she said, disappearing down the hallway. When she returned, she had changed into yoga pants and a fitted tank top. Her own clothes were as wet as mine. The coffee she made was terrible, but her company was anything but. I heard about your arrangement, she said carefully. I nearly choked on my coffee. Word travels fast in this neighborhood. She shrugged, a slight smile playing on her lips. Amanda isn't known for her discretion. And Sarah seems excited about her new freedom. Something in her tone made me look up. Olivia was watching me intently. What about you, Jack? Are you enjoying your new freedom? The tension in the room shifted, became electric. I haven't really thought about it. I lied. She moved closer, her hand finding mine. Maybe you should. What happened next was inevitable, like a script we were both reading from. Her lips tasted like coffee and possibility. Her yoga-toned body was as flexible as you'd imagine. 2 hours later, I was back home, showered and changed. Sarah was in the kitchen cooking dinner. You're late, she said, not looking up from her stir-fry. Flat tire, I replied. It wasn't technically a lie. She nodded absently. I have a showing tomorrow night. Don't wait up. I grabbed a beer from the fridge. Wouldn't dream of it. The next day, Rachel cornered me in my office. You look different, she said, studying my face. Good different. I kept my expression neutral. Just well rested. She didn't believe me. I could tell. Lunch today? Can't. Client meeting. It wasn't entirely untrue. Maria Delgado had scheduled a consultation about her divorce. She was stunning in a way that made you forget to breathe. All olive skin and dark eyes. Her husband was cheating, she suspected. She wanted to know her options. You seem very understanding about all this, she said during our meeting. I maintained my professional demeanor. I've seen many variations of this situation. She leaned forward, her perfume subtle but intoxicating. And what would you do in my situation? Our eyes met across my desk. That would depend on what you want, Mrs. Delgado. Maria, she corrected. And what I want, she stood, walking around my desk, is probably not very professional to discuss. I should have stopped her. I should have maintained boundaries. I should have done a lot of things. But Sarah's words kept echoing in my head. This isn't about love. It's about excitement, adventure. Maria's lips found mine, and professi. Onalism went out the window. Later, straightening my tie in my private bathroom, I caught my reflection. I barely recognized myself. 2 women in 2 days. This wasn't me. But then again, maybe it was. Maybe this was who I'd become in this new reality Sarah had created. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. Don't forget the 48-hour rule. Had a wonderful evening last night. My stomach clenched, but not from jealousy. More from the realization that I didn't feel jealous at all. The weekend arrived with a symphony of unspoken words. Sarah was humming around the house, a new lightness in her step. I was restless, unable to settle. The 48-hour rule meant I couldn't see Olivia or Maria, even if I wanted to. But there were other opportunities. Amanda's cocktail party on Saturday night was exactly as expected. Over-the-top luxury, flowing champagne, and enough sexual tension to power a small city. Sarah disappeared early with a silver-haired executive type. I found myself in the garden with a young artist named Sophie. She was probably half my age, with electric blue hair and multiple piercings. Your wife's friend told me about your arrangement, she said, sipping her martini. Very progressive. I laughed. That's one word for it. She stepped closer. I have a thing for older men, especially successful ones who know how to keep secrets. Her kiss tasted like gin and bad decisions. We ended up at her studio apartment in Cambridge. The walls were covered in abstract paintings. Her bed sheets were silk. She had a tattoo of a phoenix rising up her spine. I traced it with my fingers as she slept. Dawn was breaking when I got home. Sarah's car wasn't in the driveway. I showered, changed, and made coffee. When she finally came home, she didn't meet my eyes. "Good night?" I asked casually. She nodded, heading straight for the stairs. "Need to shower. Going to Amanda's for brunch." I watched her go, wondering when this had become our new normal. Monday morning, Rachel was waiting in my office. "We need to talk." She closed the door behind her. "About the agreement." I gestured for her to sit. "What about it?" "I've been hearing things. About both you and Sarah. Are you here as my lawyer or my friend?" She met my gaze steadily. "Both. And maybe something else." The tension that had always simmered between us suddenly boiled over. Her kiss was different from the others. Hungry, yes, but also familiar. Like coming home to a place you'd never been. We barely made it to the couch in my office. Afterward, straightening her skirt, she smiled sadly. "I've wanted to do that for years." "I know." She gathered her things. "The agreement needs to be amended. The 48-hour rule isn't enough. You're both spinning out of control." I leaned back in my chair. "Maybe that's the point." She paused at the door. "Be careful, Jack. This kind of freedom, it has a way of changing people." I was about to find out just how right she was. Again, the week continued in a blur of meetings, legal briefs, and stolen moments. Olivia during my lunch break. Maria in her new apartment. Sophie at her studio. Rachel in my office. Each encounter more intense than the last. Each woman offering something different. Something I hadn't known I was missing. Sarah was barely home. When she looked haunted. The lightness in her step was gone, replaced by something heavier. Something that looked a lot like regret. But neither of us knew how to stop this runaway train we'd created. Or maybe we just didn't want to. Not yet. Not until we'd seen how far we could fall. It was Amanda who finally forced us to face reality. 3 weeks into our experiment, she threw another of her legendary parties. This time it was different. The usual crowd was there. The divorcees, the seekers, the players. But there was an edge to the atmosphere I hadn't noticed before. Or maybe I was just seeing clearly for the first time. Sarah arrived separately, wearing a dress I didn't recognize. It was shorter than her usual style, more revealing. She wouldn't meet my eyes across the room. I was at the bar when Amanda cornered me. "Quite a show you've been putting on," she said, signaling for another martini. "Both of you." I took a slow sip of my scotch. "I don't know what you mean." She laughed, but it wasn't friendly. "Please." "The neighbor, the client, the artist, your partner. You've been busy." She leaned closer, her perfume overwhelming. "Want to add another name to that list?" I set my glass down carefully. "No, I don't think I do." Her perfectly manicured hand found my arm. "Why not?" "I've been told I'm quite memorable." I removed her hand gently, but firmly. "Because you're toxic, Amanda. This whole thing was your idea, wasn't it?" Her eyes narrowed. "Sarah came to me for advice. I just showed her the possibilities. You showed her how to destroy her marriage, just like you destroyed yours. 3 times." The slap echoed in the suddenly quiet room. I touched my cheek, feeling the sting. Truth hurts, doesn't it? Sarah appeared at my side, her face pale. "What's going on?" Amanda turned to her, smile sharp as a knife. "Just having a chat with your husband about his extracurricular activities." Sarah's hand found mine, squeezing hard. "We're leaving." The drive home was silent. Sarah stared out the window, tears running down her face. I kept my eyes on the road, knuckles white on the steering wheel. Finally, in our driveway, she spoke. "I can't do this anymore." Her voice was barely a whisper. I thought it would be different. I turn off the engine. Different how? I thought I'd feel young again. Free. Instead, I feel lost. We sat in the dark car, the weight of our choices pressing down on us. Do you love her? She asked suddenly. Rachel. The question surprised me. No, I don't love any of them. But you could. It wasn't a question. They all want you. Amanda told me. Olivia wants to be your second wife. Maria's already planning to divorce her husband. Even that young artist. Her voice broke. They're all just waiting for me to lose you. I reached for her hand. You haven't lost me. Not yet. She pulled away. Haven't I? Inside, the house felt different. Colder. Empty. Like all the memories we built over 23 years had been stripped away. Sarah went straight upstairs. I heard the shower running, then crying. I sat in my office, staring at the safe where I kept my copy of the agreement. The phone buzzed. Rachel. You okay? Amanda's telling everyone what happened. I ignored the message. Another buzz. Olivia. Come over. Ignored. Maria, Sophie, even Amanda herself, all wanting a piece of what was left of me. The shower stopped. Sarah's footsteps crossed the hallway. A drawer opened and closed. More footsteps. She appeared in my office doorway, wearing her old Yale sweatshirt and pajama pants, looking more like herself than she had in weeks. I want to burn it. She was holding her copy of the agreement. All of it. Everything we've done. Everyone we've. She couldn't finish. I opened the safe, took out my copy. The fireplace? She nodded. We built a fire together, something we hadn't done since last winter. The flames caught quickly, hungry for paper, for promises broken and remade. I have conditions, I said as we watched the agreement burn. She looked up, hope and fear warring in her eyes. Anything. First, we never speak of these 3 weeks again. To anyone. She nodded. Second, Amanda is no longer welcome in our lives. Another nod, more emphatic. Third, I took her hand. We go to counseling. Real counseling. Not just because we're bored, but because we want to make this work. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Yes, to all of it. And I have a condition too. Name it. Fire Rachel. I didn't hesitate. Already planning to. Monday morning. I'm restructuring the firm. She moved closer, fitting herself against me like she had thousands of times before. I'm so sorry, Jack, for all of it. I held her, watching the last pieces of the agreement turn to ash. Me too. But maybe we needed this. She looked up at me, questioning, to remember what we have, what we almost lost, what we're fighting for. The fire crackled, throwing shadows on the wall. Outside, the spring night was cool and clear. Somewhere in the city, for women were waiting for messages that would never come. But here in this room, my wife was in my arms. Real, solid, mine. The 48-hour rule no longer mattered. Time itself no longer mattered. We had crossed an ocean of other people's bodies to find, our way back to each other. It wasn't the same shore we'd left. We weren't the same people. But maybe that was okay. Maybe we needed to change to stay the same. To remember that love isn't about excitement or adventure. It's about choosing each other. Every day. Every moment. Even when it's boring. Especially when it's boring. Because in the end, that's what makes it real. That's what makes it last. Sarah tilted her face up to mine. Take me to bed? I smiled. Our bed. Only ours. Forever. And as I carried her upstairs, I thought about all the women who had shared my time these past weeks. Beautiful women. Exciting women. Women who could have given me a different kind of life. But none of them were Sarah. None of them knew me like she did. None of them had built a life with me, raised children with me, weathered storms with me. None of them were worth losing her for. In our bedroom, our sanctuary, I laid her down gently. I love you, she whispered. Only you. Always you. And this time, when we came together, it wasn't just sex. It wasn't just passion or excitement or adventure. It was everything. It was us. It was home. Now, whenever Sarah starts a sentence with honey, I've been thinking, I just smile and pull her close. Think about this instead. I say, and kiss her until she forgets whatever crazy idea was forming in her mind. It works every time, because sometimes the most exciting adventure is finding your way back to where you belong, back to who you belong with, back home.